All right. Hi, everyone. Good to Zoom you. I'm sure you're looking forward to more Zoom time. This is our, I don't know how many, we've been meeting for a year now, almost. I just want to go over the first action item, which is approving the agenda for this meeting. If you've checked your inbox in the last 24 hours, you will see that we've updated the agenda that we sent out a week ahead of time. And wanted to go over that before you're asked to approve the agenda. And then before all of that, just to say that the Zoom invite was for an hour. Our agenda was written out for an hour and a half, and we apologize for that. It's something we talked about our last meeting, and won't do that again, but want to respect the time. So we're going to try to keep it to an hour. If you can stay a little later, that may be a good idea, just given a lot going on just in the last few days. So, you know, this group is here to agree to get projects done. And in order to get projects done, of course, we have to get funding and find funding for those projects that are a priority for our community. And we learned yesterday that there is a program that we're going to learn about today with Dana Carey from Yolo County Office of Emergency Services to tell you about the Hazardous Mitigation program that's being released, and that's accepting notices of intent to apply for funding. So I'll let Dana talk about that when we get to that part of the agenda. But connected to that, there's a deadline that is the reason why we decided to go ahead and adjust the agenda, and that is February 19th, I believe, or February 15th, to submit these notices of intent. So it threw a lot of, you know, we're in this point, we've done a lot in the last year. The Fire Safe Council, a countywide Fire Safe Council, we would, in a perfect world, have a countywide community wildfire protection plan in place already, CWPP. And that is in process, you know, will be done by the end of this year. Oops, sorry, that's my daughter coming home from school. Jonah, stop. Sorry about that. So what we're doing is this process that evolved is, you know, deciding projects to put forward. The Fire Safe Council also needs to be okay with how we're choosing projects. So the newest action item is looking at the criteria in which we're looking at projects for the CWPP. I went over it at our last meeting briefly. We gave you very little time, I admit, to really process that before this meeting. But it is something we would like to put forward, how we rank projects, how we're looking at those in this objective way. And so that we can put forward some projects. Actually, we'll talk a little bit about this in a minute, but submitting a notice of intent for those projects that have been so far identified as potential projects. So there's more on that. I'm a little distracted with my dog, I'm sorry. But there's basically 3 new things. We'll hear from Dana, and then we'll consider a couple of action items for the intent of getting, you know, at the end of the day, all of our projects funded. So we know this is important to the group. It's why we're all spending our time doing this. And I look forward to, you know, discussing this if it's something that you're willing to do at this meeting. Included in the email, Tanya and I included in the email acknowledgement that, you know, in the bylaws, we want to give a whole week's notice on content for action approval. We didn't have that amount of time. If we do need to table these action items, that's fine too. We would just suggest moving up the next Fire Safe Council meeting that we normally have in February, the fourth Wednesday of the month, up to maybe the 2 weeks from now, for example. So, you know, we're just trying to think of everything. We want to be able to respect the process that we put in place. but also not take, lose an opportunity to get our projects funded. I hope that makes sense. I'll leave it for questions or for Chief Lopez to put this agenda forward for approval.
Hi, Heather. Yeah, actually, I was just gonna maybe for the sake of our meeting and time in covering the approval of the January meeting agenda and then the minutes from the November meeting.
It looks like we have a couple hands up, so we may want to address those before we approve anything. So Bill and Kate.
I'm sorry, that was an error on my hand.
Oh,
I
okay.
apologize.
What about Kate Laddish? Did you mean to put your hand up?
I did. I'd be delighted to move to approve the amended agenda as presented.
And I would second that, Stompon.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing if that's okay.
All right, all those approving the agenda for January meeting signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next item to approve is the November meeting minutes.
And I deeply apologize. I realized today that I hadn't sent them out back in December when I thought I did. So we may want to table that one up to you
Okay.
guys.
We'll strike that from the agenda and move that.
Very sorry.
And then moving on, do we have any member announcements, Tanya or Heather?
Actually, I have a brief announcement. Joaquin, our Grizzly Corps Fellows, put together on our Google spreadsheet, which you did get the link to, a list of training opportunities just for anyone to check out, because there's a ton of stuff that comes our way and it's sort of a curated list. So that's my announcement.
Okay, thanks for sharing. Moving on to coordinator report, Solano and Yolo County RCDs. Is that you, Heather?
I'm going to keep it really brief to say we are hiring an outreach coordinator, flying a position to starting tomorrow. That will be dedicated to developing the website for the Fire Safe Council and managing the social media posts and really being able to curate, resource and information. So that is going out tomorrow. It's probably going to take 4 or 5 or 6 weeks to really put someone in place, but hopefully we'll get someone good who can dedicate their time, help support the effort that we are starting here, getting a website and a lot more communication going. And then secondly, our Prescribed Burn Association grant is moving along, and we're meeting with CAL FIRE tomorrow to see if we can expedite that project. So those are the big ones. You've seen the coordinator report. I'm not going to spend time today going over a lot of that, which is works in progress that are moving forward slowly but surely.
There is one more thing. I'd like to introduce Karen Young from the Solano RCD. She is going to be my counterpart to the south. She's doing
Everyone.
Hi, Karen, welcome.
part-time to start, but she's ramping up. I think she's been working at this job for 2 weeks. So we're super excited about having more official staff, and Chris has been doing an amazing job with lots of promises of money, but not much actually in his hands yet. So welcome, Karen.
Thanks. Great to be here, everyone.
Okay, great. Next item on the agenda, we have Dana Carey with Yolo County OES here to provide us an update. Dana?
So I was asked to provide an update to you guys, and as we started talking about what that update should be, We realized that I should also probably give you guys some background information on some funding sources and things so that you have those. So let me just get the right thing on the right screen here, if this message will get out of my way. All right, so I'm just going to share my screen as long as one of you enables it for me.
Sure, let me see if I can do that for Tanya.
You should be good to go, Dana.
Awesome, thank you. I just thought it would be easier if I kind of give you guys a little bit of a visual here while I talk. So I'm in the middle of my little presentation, but that's okay. My 2 slides presentation. So I wanted to kind of go over funding in general. Funding, like everything else in emergency management, is very, very complicated. And I know we've had several discussions over past meetings and different chit chat and stuff amongst each other about the Senator Dodd money. Okay, we should probably stop calling that. It's actually state general fund money is where that's coming from. But it's not the only funding source for any kind of projects like what you guys do are making the list of projects. We typically in emergency management don't have access to something like that. So most of the funding sources we're always tapping into are things that are repetitive, that we understand when they're coming out and have set deadlines and reasons why they're released and things like that. So just to kind of clear up any misunderstandings about the state general fund money. So obviously that was awarded to us to achieve some very specific goal sets. And these are the 3 categories that were in the initial write-up. So fuel reduction, alert and warning, fire preparedness, and mitigation, obviously very broad categories. And I've put in bullets there some of the projects that were listed under those 3 categories. So one was the control burn along State Route 128. Another that was in the narrative was control burn along State Route 16. Chipper program, prescribed burn association, and invasive species removal on creeks and canals. So as Heather mentioned, she's going to attend something that may actually tick that PBA bullet right off the list tomorrow if they say yes. We're thinking, and we've been told by a couple CAL FIRE people, we need to get it memorialized in writing that the SR 128 burn they're budgeting for. So we may not even have to use the funds for that either. We may go back to the chipper program estimate that we originally put in there. Even before Fire Safe Council started was when this was given to Senator Dodd's office, and adjust the estimate because the estimate was about $600,000. It was more designed on the whole, I'm going to buy a big, huge piece of equipment and have an annual maintenance budget on it. Maybe we don't need that fancy of a chipper program and we can reduce that amount and use it for other things. Same with invasive species removal. It didn't really specify which creeks and waterways, so it's pretty kind of vanilla description. The alert and warning system, the siren system design for Pleasance Valley Road is coming right off the top of the 1.5 million. I'm automatically going to be in my OES staff recommendation to the board saying $800,000 is for the siren system design, not to put the towers in and put the sirens on them, because that's millions of dollars that we didn't get. But we can actually tick off step 1, which is design the system and do all of the work to get it to shovel ready. So that's what's going to be going on there. There was also a line item for Winter's website. We have to still kibitz with the city of Winters, whether they still need that, whether they found that funding some other way, since this has been such a long process. And then the last one, the only thing that was in that last category was generators, but Yolo OES has been managing a grant that's specific for generators for about 3 years now, that's come out of public safety power shutoff operations. So we've already bought generators for a lot of water districts. We bought generators for the elections office for during election time to keep the poll stations up and running. So a lot of generators have already been purchased, and maybe all the generators that were needed when this was conceptualized are already bought. So that's why I just wanted to kind of frame that for you. Whenever we talk about that state general fund money and looking to the Fire Safe Council list of projects, it's to backfill any projects we originally sent up this flagpole to Senator Dodd's office. that we've already taken care of because we found the money some other way. So my staff recommendation to the board, I'm thinking, remember, this hasn't been done yet. Nobody's project is in, nobody's project is out at this point, aside from the alert warning siren system. But I'm thinking my staff recommendation is going to be either 2 or 3 choices of how to split up the funds and cover as much ground as we can with that. But it's not the only funding source by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, as we go through things today, it is one of the smallest funding sources because this program is currently up for grabs. So out of every single response-driven emergency, no matter what it is, a certain percentage is held out for mitigation grants. And that happens after the disaster is dealt with. So I'm pretty sure the 428 million that we're seeing for hazard mitigation proposals right now is either from the firestorm, kind of the LNU, CZU, all those, or this could be the matching money for COVID, although to me, it doesn't look big enough to be the COVID one. And so you're talking about $428 million throughout the entire state of California. We have one of the gold standard hazard mitigation plans in Yolo County. It was being used as a example by Cal OES when we passed it in 2018. We have a new revision coming up in 2023, by the way. So this is something that for almost any project, and not even just fire safe councils, you know, if we've got reclamation district projects, city projects, doesn't matter whose project it is, we're trying to encourage them to go after this funding pot too. Because let's say you get both, you get to choose which one you're going to use. So if one has a cost match and the other one doesn't, you choose the one that doesn't. But if you only get one out of the two, it was better that you put in for both. It's kind of like when my stepson wanted to apply for colleges and things, you know, you put in applications for every place you might want to go and you apply for as many scholarships as possible, because the more you put in the top of the funnel, only a certain amount falls out of the bottom of the funnel. That's what we're talking about with funding on any kind of mitigation project, whether it's fire, flood, doesn't matter. So I'm kind of giving you guys this information because you should always be thinking, what are the projects we need to do to keep Yolo safe? It doesn't matter where the funding's coming from. You know, dream big is what I like to say. If we have to whittle it down to get it funded or something, we might do that during an application process, but get what we actually need down on paper, because the goal is always to fund everything. We're going to always be on the hunt for those monies, and it's not like disasters are going away. So every time there's a response, there's going to be mitigation monies. And right now, there's obviously a lot because some of our disasters most recently have been very big. So that's kind of what I wanted to put out there. The differences in the funding programs, when you hear from OES, it's because we're trying to encourage you guys to go after other funding sources. And it's not necessarily going to be the Fire Safe Council that even submits for some of these things. Hazard mitigation wise, the Resource Conservation District oversees the Fire Safe Council and OES helps them, but they may not have necessarily the application ability that a local jurisdiction does, like the county or one of the 4 cities. So depending on where the project is, what the project deals with, how shovel ready it is, kind of makes the determination who has the funding match on who's going to put in that notice of intent, which is the first step. It's a nice, cute little form that just says what my idea is. If your idea passes through Cal OES and FEMA and they go, hey, yes, this fits the mitigation program perfectly, they invite you back to do the formal application and your cost benefit analysis and all the stuff that I know that Bill has already done on the East Davis fire project. So you're a step ahead for sure. But it's great because we can do a lot of NOIs, and even if they don't get approved for this round, we keep them in our back pocket. And the next time mitigation funds come around, we put the same NOIs in. There's no development time because we already have it done. And we just keep putting them in until they get funded. I've been turned down for hazard mitigation monies sometimes 2 and 3 times. And then by the 3rd or 4th time, I get awarded. So it's one of those things that is never done until you get the project funded and you're off with shovels and running. And so we just want to definitely encourage you guys to not just look at the state funding source because it is such a small pot of money. We are going to have to carve it up. We're going to have to give some options. We're going to have to make sure they fit in those 3 categories I was talking about, that they benefit the area that's burned before, which is predominantly the western side of the county. But if, hey, everything's done on the western side, we start moving easterly. But this is another one that I really wanted to highlight for you guys because there's a lot. We've never seen a hazard mitigation grant program this large in this state ever. It's very unheard of. And the fact that the state, Cal OES, is even putting their money, $85 million behind the typical 25% match. So that means that anybody who gets the new Prepare CA funding plus the mitigation funding, there is no local cost match on it whatsoever. And the state's putting that money in there, A, because they have to legally, and B, because mitigation projects are what we do to try to stop hazards and response from happening. So for every $1 of mitigation, you save about $6 in response. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there, define those funding sources, give you guys that overview as quickly as I could, and leave as much time for questions so we can make sure everybody understands the process for the Yolo OES staff recommendation to the board for the state monies, plus what else is out there, and we can totally help whoever's going to be the applicant. If it's the county, obviously we'll be doing it anyway, for these mitigation programs, because it's due, the notice of intents are due by the 15th. Pretty easy to get done, and it's definitely something that people are hyping now. I've never seen this many emails go out on hazard mitigation program. So questions?
Well, I just want to clarify, when you say board, you mean Board of Supervisors?
Yes.
Yes, okay, yeah.
Looks like we have a question.
Okay. Sorry,
Bill,
3 screens.
did you raise your hand?
Actually, I have some comments, but I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time for them or on the action item that follows it. But I have several points that I would like to raise to the group. I don't feel like today is the day to take action on the project ranking sheet for a variety of reasons. So I can share that now, or I can share it at the action item.
Why don't we do it at the action item, Bill? And then just so that we make sure we have space for any other questions specific to what Dana's just now presented. Is that okay?
Sure. I'm fine with that.
Let's see, I didn't see who raised their hand first, but it might have been John Lindsay.
Yeah, hi, Dana, I had a question for you. Is there, I'm a little surprised to hear that $800,000 has gone off the top when all the communication we've had from the steering committee was that it was a bigger amount. And I'm also extremely confused as to why we have a steering committee that's making recommendations on our end, but it sounds like that you've already, you have the decision-making power. So what are we, I don't understand the interplay between it. And I also am curious to see the written recommendations from Senator Dodd's office where this was all allocated. It seems like this has already all been allocated in a certain way. Yet for the past 4 or 5 months, we've been laboring under the assumption, especially the steering committee, that all of these projects had a chance at being funded. And then I'm also very confused about the ranking sheet that just came out because in conversations I've had with some of the steering committee members, they said they didn't have a vote or anything else that was held on those ranking numbers. So I'd just like to get some clarity there. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll speak to everything about the ranking numbers. I may have to punt to RCD on that one. But as far as let me see how I explain this. The state monies were acquired before Fire Safe Council was ever built. They were acquired based on some listening sessions with residents along Pasitas Road on both the Solano and the Winter side. And so they told the county, both counties actually, Solano and Yolo, everything that they thought would help make things better in the future for fires in that area. We tried to generalize a lot of that conversation, put it in a recap and this was Supervisor Saylor that went after these monies with Senator Dodd. So their office put it in a recap of, hey, we need $2 million for this. So obviously we didn't even get the 2 million that we asked for. We got the 1.5 million, Solano got 1.9. I am missing how much Napa got, but they also got some as well under this. And it's kind of for that general areas, what they want to target. But again, if we've attacked everything that the public brought up in those listening sessions, then I want to use all of you guys' hard work that you're doing on the CWPP and all of your rankings and what you guys feel is important. And as long as I can make it fit into one of the 3 categories, show that it's beneficial for what the monies were originally gone for. Like I was saying, I've already covered the cost of so many of those things in other ways that I'm going to try to get other projects funded under that, but also under this hazard mitigation grant. So what you guys are doing is you're ranking the projects for overall importance of what we want to accomplish as one master fire safe council in Yolo. But sometimes grants and the nature of grants will only fund this thing or under this definition, or like the example for tomorrow with Heather, Prescribed Burn Association. She was working very hard on an application for that and everything. And they just sent an email that said that they made direct funder. So that means it's not even a grant. So sometimes we start going down a pathway to find funding, and then we get a 90-degree turn because somebody magically wants to fund it some other way. So really your rankings, you guys definitely want to keep that up. You want to do that. You want to prioritize things, and we're going to try to get the money in the priority that you set. But if a funding opportunity comes up for something that's priority 5, I'm definitely not going to ignore it. I'm going to try to get that money, swash it here into Yolo, and make sure we can get as many of those things done as possible. So I am sorry for that confusion, but that's kind of why I'm here today, is to really clear up any questions. So.
Correct. So as a follow-on, if I'm understanding this correctly, the 1.5 million from SB 29 is already spoken.
800,000 of it's already spoken for, not 1.5 million. So the supervisor who went for the money really has already worked with Supervisor Vasquez on the Solano side. Oh, and Jim's on too, so we can even get his perspective on this. And they wanted that siren system. So I have to work with the emergency manager in Solano County to try to get that siren system designed, because it crosses a county boundary, and usually funding is county specific. So we're both going to have to put in money from each of our sides to get that thing going across a county boundary. So that's why that one's just in already, because it was in the suggestion of Senator Dodd's office. The other ones, like I said, I've already found some funding sources from them. And if that PBA thing works out tomorrow, that takes a huge amount off the top. And then I don't know if RCD wants to talk to about the rankings or call on more hands, because we have 3 up now.
I can do either one. I mean, let me first maybe address the ranking the best I can. The CWPP committee was established from members of the Fire Safe Council, trying to get a smaller group, working group together to, with varying expertise to work on the way we wanted to, the way that the CWPP would roll out. It was kind of a small group technical committee project. It doesn't have, and it didn't have a process. I mean, you're correct to say there was no action item at the last meeting approving criteria. We've been working with the criteria that's in the spreadsheet that I went over at the last Fire Safe Council meeting. We've been working on that for several meetings in the CWPP committee and fine tuning those and discussing them. So it may have been an overstatement to say that they were recommendations from the CWPP committee, but they are like where we're at this time in the CWPP committee process. What conflated things was the request for recommendations to the Fire Safe Council for projects to be recommended for the Dodd funding. And so there was late breaking for us criteria, and maybe it was just a miscommunication misstep about that it needed to be focused on the Winters area or LNU footprint wasn't communicated to us. And so we were trying to incorporate that for that particular state funding source. And it did confuse the objective process that we're trying to establish, which essentially is it a low, medium, or high wildfire risk area? Is it shovel ready? And has the project proponent submitted a project form? That's essentially what the ranking process is at this moment. I think it would be, we're all kind of doing this together as we're moving through this as a council in process. So this is why we're bringing it all here to discuss and have agreement upon. We do need to, and this maybe because we're trying to respond to fund availability, seeing if we can talk about this process now. But I did understand that there's probably a lot of questions. So did I answer all the questions that you had?
Heather, Brad here. I think that was good. I don't want to lose sight of Ken Brighton and Jim Provenza. They've had their hands up. And then also Bill has his hand up too. If we could jump to them, Ken.
Great, thanks. Just a quick question. Dana, when you said the 15th, I didn't hear a month. That's February 15th, I hope?
It is February 15th, yes. And so
and that's having the full LOI going from Yolo RCD out, right? So we have to work with them before the 15th of next month, right?
well, it may not be an NOI from Yolo RCD. So I'm going to pick on a project I know. So let's say the address project, right? To actually
one near and dear to my heart. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I see it pop up like 3 times, 3 different areas, right? So let's say we decide, or you guys want to support that project, and I'm just going to ask for like a yes, we like that one. We may put in 20 NOIs, but that one could be from the county because it's predominantly in the unincorporated areas. Whereas I know that the chief there in Winters would like a bridge replaced that isn't in the city of Winters. It's actually on private property. So it would need an easement to be replaced, and it would have to be somebody in control of the unincorporated area that puts the NOI in for that. Not even the property owner or something like that. So it goes down to who has jurisdictional responsibility as to who the NOI has to come from. But if you guys support, let's say 5 out of 10 projects are on your list for submission for this, we'll work with the 5 agencies to get them in. And honestly, probably most of my staff will draft them because we're pretty used to those NOIs, but we'll help the other agency who may not be as familiar with the Cal OES grants portal and how to do the submission and everything, because it's not just submitting a piece of paper anymore. Everything's got its own database to get it in by the timeline, but it has such little information on it. It's like, what's your scope of work, what's your estimated cost, and what's your name and contact information, and who has signing ability. That's pretty much what's on those NOIs. So you can get them in really fast. You can put 25 of them in and hopefully get funded for 19 of them. So that's what we're going for.
And the cost estimate doesn't have to be very formal, just a rough back of the envelope for starters. Great, thank you.
Absolutely. The formal application process, you got to put your cost benefit analysis, you got to break out all your line items, but they don't even ask you back to do that if they don't like your project. Once they ask you back, your project's pretty much funded. You just go through all of the ins and outs of the formal application.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Supervisor Provenza? I think you're muted.
Thank you. First of all, thanks to everybody for your participation here and for the hard work that you're doing on fires. It's really important. It's the first meeting I've been to, but I've had staff here and I know how hard you're working and how committed you all are. I had a couple questions. Dana, the $800,000, was that Could you explain what that was for again? I'm a little confused.
It's to design an audible siren system. So the original kind of ask paragraph to Senator Dodd's office asked for 1.5 million to potentially design and construct, but we didn't get funded that much. We're not going to take the whole grant just for one siren system. So instead, what we kind of have thrown out there as an idea is, why don't we use a smaller pot of money to do all the design work? You know, where is every tower going to go? Are we going to put equipment on an existing Verizon tower? Are we going to build a new tower and have to do CEQA to build the new tower and all that stuff? So that design would say exactly how many towers need to be on the Solano side, need to be on the Yolo side. And I still have to work this out with my counterpart in Solano. Please don't think this is a for sure done deal. It's what everybody wants there. So we have to figure out a way to make it happen in the most cost-effective manner possible. So.
Well, and Solano County received some separate funding, I believe. There's a number of allocations in the bill, so it may not all be from this funding. One of the other questions is my staff had requested a copy of all the applications for this funding. We came up with 14, and the total came very close to the total available, to 1.5 million. It depending on which version of the Yochadihi education project, it would be either slightly under or slightly over the 1.5 million. So are you saying that there's additional requests for this funding in addition to the 14 on the list?
There are requests for things that don't go through Fire Safe Council. So there's always projects in the county's multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. There's very few kind of hard square fire projects. I worded that project line item in the plan as to be a little bit more vanilla, so lots of other projects would fit under it if we got funding. But there were asks from, say, Winters Fire Department and some members that were on those listening sessions originally, well before the Fire Safe Council was ever developed. So we're trying to balance what they want, what's already been funded a different way, plus anything we can get from the Fire Safe Council funded out of this very small pot of money. I mean, it's not a really big one, obviously, so we really want to funnel a ton of them to the other pot too and see how many we can get funded out of that at the same time.
Well, one of the nice things about the 1.5 million is it's available immediately. It's general fund. There isn't, somebody's not taking a cut of it. It's just money that goes directly to county, and the Board of Supervisors will be voting on the funding. We were hoping to have a recommendation from the Fire Safe Council, and I'm not here to influence the recommendation of the Fire Safe Council, but I did want to correct I think what might be a misperception, and that once this money went into the bill, it's 1.5 million to the County of Yolo for fuel reduction, alert warning systems, fire preparedness and mitigation. There's no geographical restriction on the use of fund or preference for the use of funds. And this is what the East Davis Fire District contacted me about, because of course, most of the money is going to projects in West Yolo area where there was a fire, but this particular project is not in that area. However, and I agree, Dana, with what you said, that what is the important thing is to have projects that are necessary to keep us safe. And one of the reasons for urgency for this particular proposal that warrants consideration is that it's in my district, and I'm very familiar with the area. I've walked it several times. It's between the city and the county. The North Fork of the Putah Creek runs in that area. It's heavily wooded. There's so much fuels for fire, it kind of scares you even to look at it when you walk through the area. And then Bill Weisgarber scares me even further when he tells me what potentially could happen. The letter from the Davis Fire Chief and the Davis Fire Marshal said that there's 1,000 homes in the neighborhood close to the North Fork Creek that represents a high vulnerability for exposure to catastrophic fires, such as what occurred at the Sonoma County Tubbs Fire that resulted in total destruction of the Coffee neighborhood. So that's what I'm worried about. Last fire season, I was able to get the city of Davis and the county to put some funds up, but it didn't alleviate the problem or the danger. And what this application, I understand, does, it's a one-time application. in an emergency situation to get it to a baseline, to allow time for the city of Davis and the county of Yolo to address the long-term situation there. And it is a small amount of money. But I think the misperception is that that would somehow be ranked lower because it's not in the area of a prior fire. A fundamental rule of statutory interpretation is you look at the plain language of the law, and the plain language of the law says County of Yolo. But I thought, well, maybe I missed something. So I called Senator Dodd yesterday evening to confirm that no, this was for the County of Yolo. The money could be used anywhere. And he wants us to make the decision based on areas of greatest need. So I'm giving you that information because I don't want to see this urgent project kind of put on a slow boat with some other source of funding that might be a year or two away. Now, you can decide to recommend it or not recommend it. I'm not telling anybody what to do, but I am saying that it's important to be considered on equal basis to other projects in terms of safety and the necessity for urgent action on the particular project.
Yeah, thanks for that, Supervisor Prevens. And I know that Tara's hand went up while you're speaking, so I know she has some insider info on that, and I'll kick it to her in just a second. But definitely urban conflagration south of Davis is a problem, that we know that in the hazard mitigation program, which is why we're going to be working to find any available funding source. But I also wanted to mention that we do not have this funding yet. So I know that you said it's immediately available, and definitely that is the way the state budget language reads, that we've already been awarded that. We did just learn last week that Cal OES is not going to be taking anything off the top of this funding, thank God, because I know I've told some of you that before I have to wait and see what Cal OES's rules on using the funding are. So that was very good news, but they still don't have a process of how they're going to administrate it for us. So none of the 3 counties have been given any funding as of yet. We're still waiting on Cal OES. I am kind of trying to look at my crystal ball saying, will I even have this funding in enough time to actually do anything for this fire season? The answer may be no, I just don't know at this point, but that is what has held off the OES staff recommendation to the 5 board members, is because until I know when we're going to have the funding and what the rules are on spending it and things, I can't really make you a recommendation as of yet. So Tara, did you have something else you wanted to put in there?
Sure, I just wanted to add that the only reason we have the 1.5 million is that was a direct result of hearing from the community in multiple sessions. And I see Kate nodding, she was part of it. And we hear the danger. And part of this is because the community came in the Greater Winters area and said, we have been evacuated 5 out of the last 6 years. And this fire was different than others. And they said loud and clear, there were some, the cell service is spotty out there. And so that's why the sirens were raised, similar to tsunami and tornado warnings. And so the list that was put together was a direct result of community feedback from members who are now part of fire safe councils that were formed later. And we've continued to hear from some of those communities. So I totally agree that there are many other areas in the county that are needed. And yes, statutorily it is open, but I've also spoken to the district director who is like, we put the community forward and said, this is what the community wants. And if we don't do what we said we would do with the funding, I'm worried that it risks future funding from our representatives. But the nice thing is that Senator Dodd was amazing in getting state funding for us. So it doesn't mean that we can't do that again and ask for more if some of this hazard mitigation funds don't work out. So we can continue doing a yes and path and doing both. But I just wanted to remind everyone, some folks have learned about this DOD funding in just the last few months, but this is something we've been working on, frankly, since October of 2020, and put together that list and submitted it and worked in partnership in the spring of 2021 to submit that $2 million list. And as Dana said, we still don't have those funds in hand yet. So we're looking forward to it, but I look forward to working together to help. I agree. I loved your statement, Dana, that we want a list of all the projects we need to keep everyone safe, and our goal is to fund all of them and to find the right funding sources to do that. So anyway, in summary, this funding was in response to high frequent fire areas that have been evacuated and have experienced fires very frequently. So thank you.
Yeah, and so I just wanted to point out for some of our Fire Safe Council members that maybe I'm just going to say residents and don't work in government like some of the people who are speaking just now. Please understand that you have 2 supervisors' offices that just spoke up now. So I have to send my staff recommendation to them. And just as Supervisor Provenza said, the supervisors are the ones that will make the decision on how to spend the money. So it's my job to try to get as many different things in there. That's why I preface the whole thing with nothing's in or out yet, except for the alert system, because I have to go, hey, I'm giving you A or B, or maybe even A, B, or C, because here's how I got to that list of projects and why they should be funded and who's supporting what and everything. And then the supervisors can follow my staff recommendation. They can throw it out the window and totally fund however the 5 of them agree on. But that's kind of how the process starts with funding like this, is they look to a department or division within the county to make a staff recommendation, but ultimately they decide.
And I guess my point was, well, don't deprioritize this because of the location. It's 146,000 out of 1.5 million. All the rest of it, including education program, that seems to be a lower priority than a bunch of houses that might burn down. When you prioritize, I think it's important that you look at some actual risks. I'm scared to death that we will have houses burned down if there's a fire, this coming fire season. And I think this money will come faster than other grants because there's a long process. I may be wrong. And I think Senator Dodd's office can help us expedite that funding. But this is a small piece. And if there's a fire and a bunch of houses burned down, either on the Yolo side or the City of Davis side, I think that we will be all held to account, and the public won't care where the funding was located. They'll just want to know why the hell we didn't do something to prevent it. And I don't mean to state that so strongly, but that's what I worry about. That's why I'm here, because I think it needs to be prioritized. The legislation says County of Yolo, and if you go through the bill, there's plenty of cities that got specific allocations, plenty of areas, plenty of projects that got specific allocation. This says County of Yolo, and that's exactly what it means. And Supervisor Saylor has a different view, but rather than that being presented behind the scenes to staff as if it were board policy, that should have gone to the board. The board has not weighed in on this. And I don't like having to be here doing this, but I think the direction that we're going right now needs to be corrected. And so that when you make your decision, you're making it on actual risk and actual risk of fire, risk of loss of property and loss of life.
Duly noted. Very appreciated. And do know that Senator Dodd's office calls our office. It's getting to about every other week at this point. They call me, the Solano EM, and the Napa EM to see if we've gotten our money yet. So they are doing very due diligence to check in with all 3 of us in very timely manner. I know that they are trying to get that money through California for all of everybody.
And I would just like to say that the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, part of that was a mapping project that I shared last month as well, that is a wildfire risk assessment. So a wildfire risk assessment has been done for the county. And there is high priority areas, medium and low. And that's based on, flame length and structures and probability of burn. And so that has been mapped using the best available science, including CAL FIRE and the state responsibility areas, the local responsibility areas, the federal responsibility areas. So there's definitely science and objective mapping that's going into the community wildfire protection process as part of the prioritizing. I know there's a few more hands here. Mr. Turner.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Ron Turner from Senator Dodd's office, and thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak. And as both the supervisors' offices have stated, we're more than willing to continue to work on attaining any additional grant fundings for the Yolo County Fire Safe Councils. We continue to monitor the timeline that's been given to us, and we're pushing our counterparts throughout the structure to come up with that funding that is so desperately needed. But one of the things that we kind of keep an eye on with all of our fire safe councils is their direction and the input that they have from their community, and that the decisions that they make are on a collective basis. So we would encourage you to continue that dialogue that you have with all of your community members and with your board of supervisors on how the monies that you do receive are spent. Thank you.
This is Neil. I don't know how to raise my hand. I'm afraid I'm not as literate on these Zoom calls as many of you are, but I just want to remind people that, you know, West Winters has suffered more fires in the past decade than I think anywhere else in the state. And the residents in 6 of the last 8 years have been under mandatory evacuation. So this isn't just the potential, this is the reality. And this is the reality we're living under. And even though, and we've lost homes in the area along Positas. And so, you know, I really would encourage all of you is, you know, I realize that in all cases, when there's little money available, that everyone tries to get at it and for good reason. I mean, every one of the proposals have real merit. I serve as a stakeholder representative on the CWPP committee. And so I recognize that all of these are meritorious proposals, but in terms of how to rank, it's a real challenge. But I would really encourage you and encourage the supervisors to look at where the reality has been and what, you know, where have people 6 out of the last 8 years packed up, left their homes because of fire sweeping down on them and can't get back in for another 3 to 5 days and do this year after year. And we would really like to have some help in reducing the fire potential in this area. And, you know, the early warning is an important part of it, but it's also, let's get rid of all this build up vegetation, the eucalypts that have been planted here in woodlots and even clearing the roads so we can get out safely. These are the types of things that I think are really important for the residents in our area, which we, through the past years, after the first time we were evacuated, through community action with Winters Fire Department, we got together and started creating lists of projects and voted on them for, as a community, for the Greater Winters CWPP. So these are through a number of years that these have been developed. And I certainly agree with Bill that I lived right next to that old Pewter Creek drainage in East Davis. So I know how dangerous that is as well. But the reality is that hasn't burned, and we have 6 out of the last 8 years. So thank you.
And I think Bill's been waiting very patiently while everybody talks about his project. So.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of quick thoughts. You know, everyone's kind of covered the waterfront here pretty well. But to Heather's point, I see, you know, Neil and Ken and, you know, a few of my colleagues from the CWPP steering committee here. I don't feel like we ever finalized what our ranking system is. And now we've got this document going forward as a recommendation. So I don't think that it's really ready for prime time. And I was led to believe for quite a few months that, you know, the early funding DOD money was available to everyone, and was quite surprised to hear some of the latest developments, including Dana saying that over half of it is going to the Siren project, which is just a design when we do have vegetation management issues, countywide, Winters and Cape and Rumsey and our little project in North Fork Puda Creek. So it just seems like there's a lot of moving parts here that haven't been settled, and I just felt like the finish line got moved, and now it's a rush to judgment. So I don't think that a decision is ready for prime time tonight.
Well, I would like to remind you all that we do have another item below that, which Dana had talked quite a bit about, which is approve the NOI submissions, which that actually has a pretty sharp deadline. We know, we can't push that one back, whereas we don't actually have the DOD funding in hand. So I agree that, not going through all that ranking right now is probably best in the interest of time. But I would be curious to know what people think about the NOIs, because that sounds like a great opportunity for everybody.
Just a quick thought on the NOIs. As I've always told my kids, don't walk past open doors and don't artificially eliminate your own options. So, I'm all in on the NOIs, but still my previous statement stands. So thank you.
This is exactly why we have a fire safe council with everyone and from all stakes. So even though we're having some challenging conversation, this is why we're all here doing this together. So I think that it sounds like we're moving towards tabling the criteria for the CWPP. But we may also be able to move. I'm also looking at Chief Lopez here, obviously, but moving to approve NOIs for any of these projects that are listed on the CWPP spreadsheet, or other ones that crop up. There's not a reason to be exclusive.
Yeah, Heather, I think Tracy brought up a point that the list could be shared for the proposed projects.
Okay, so yes, that was one thing that we did send out yesterday, and I can share my screen and we can look at those all together. This is on the project CWPP project ranking sheet, and the best way to go about this, we could just read through them all. Tracy, did you have a suggestion?
Thanks. I had a question, and Dana, maybe I missed this when you said it. Are you suggesting that each of these projects that the Fire Safe Council suggests go forward, excuse me, each be their own NOI, or that is the county gonna do a master submission and include them all? I've been helping with Napa County, and the word we got from Cal OES was put it all together as one. And then they were going to give us feedback of what we might cut out of it. But we're putting everything plus the kitchen sink in for the Napa one versus doing a whole bunch of separate ones. So that's trying to understand that process.
That's an excellent question. It kind of depends on what it is. And I know that's not a black and white answer. That's a gray answer. But like if grants succeed most when they have lots of partners on them. So if we take a project, and I'll pick on the address one again, easy low hanging fruit. That's for 5 different areas. It's supported by Fire Safe Council. We've got multiple fire departments asking it for it. So the narrative of who all would support that and everything would give it a really, really good running, I guess is the only word I've got for it, in that hazard mitigation and the way FEMA looks at it. Because don't forget, Cal OES does not make the decision on what gets funded through hazard mitigation. FEMA does. So you have to make it through Cal OES to get to FEMA, but then FEMA has to like the way your project sounds too. So sometimes you join projects together so that they look like they have the most bang for their buck. And then other times a project is big enough and cross-cutting enough all by its itty bitty self that you submit it as one. So that's why I just need what all you guys want NOIs on. I got to still work with whoever the submitting agency would be, make sure they got grants portal, or not grants portal access, Cal OES portal access to submit it, a lot of different steps and everything so that we can get them in by that 15th deadline. So my staff have several weeks of work just trying to get everybody organized and make sure it all gets in.
I guess what I'm asking is, what about doing one submittal on behalf of Yolo County OES that says, you know, wildfire preparedness, blah, blah, blah for Yolo County, and we include the address signs, and I think they don't fund sirens and stuff this time, and we include a lot of the fuel projects and capacity, kind of throw it all in, and then we can show a ton of different partners. And then, you know, I assume they're going to accept the NOI, and then we go in and finalize it with them, you know, with Cal OES, so what they think is going to be the most fundable. You guys obviously have a lot of experience with that to then get it up the food chain to FEMA.
Yeah, I've never actually seen an NOI like that succeed before, is the reason I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, because we have tried those things before, and FEMA is the one who wants them broken out in the manner that I stated. And also there is the discussion of who's paying the match. So if you put in one NOI, it's 125% match on everything listed. So if you put $20 million in, you got to come up with 25% of that if Prep CA isn't going to fund all of that 25% of that 20 million. When you split it apart, you know, it's like, okay, Prep CA will fund the match for these 10 applications, but not this one. So then we're finding who has the local match for the one. I hate to say it, it's a money juggling game. But I did not know that Napa was putting them all in one swath. Again, I have never had success trying that, so I wouldn't necessarily try it like that.
So just to orient you, if you've not looked at this sheet before, the projects that are in the highlighted kind of beige, yellowy, down to row 17, those are all projects that a project proponent submitted a project form for. So those ones we have information on. And then the rest are, this is all the information we have on these projects. So I guess my question, going to an action item so that we can go ahead and get some NOIs submitted for some of these projects. There's a couple suggestions. One, the ones that have already submitted project forms, and there's a lot there already. Or if another, if there's any of these other projects or something else we don't have on this list that a project proponent comes forward to us with, could also be included or considered for an NOI. I'm just trying to be as inclusive as possible, but also clear in what we're trying to do here. What seems to be reasonable?
Dana, I got a question, and maybe just for conversation. So it sounds like with the action item to approve the CWPP project ranking sheet, something that maybe needs to be discussed a little further, but would you suggest within those projects in that ranking sheet that those be presented for a NOI for funding?
Yeah, I don't need anything so formal. I mainly want to know, because there's a lot of stuff on this sheet, which are valid projects and which aren't, because I'm inclined to go, hey, can we submit them all?
Well, I mean, really, yeah, is that an option?
Yeah, it definitely is. It's more of a logistics on who's submitting which one and stuff like that. So I'll have to carve all that up if you want to just go the whole list. But can you scroll down so I can just see, these are the projects that I just don't know about, because there's lots of projects on your list that don't follow your formal submission process. But if they're still needed, then I'm kind of like, do we still put them in anyway? Just put, because this is like February 15th. After that, we have to wait for the next time mitigation funds come out, which BRIC mitigation funds come out at the end of the calendar year, and they're pretty steady. The mitigation funds for the, we call it the 404 program, they come out whenever, and they're tied to a response. So they could come out a couple times a year with new deadlines, or they might only come out one time a year. But once we do the work on the NOI stuff, we have all that data, and we can just keep putting them in every time they pop up.
Well, the information that we do have is we have where they fall in the wildfire risk assessment, whether or not they're shovel ready. We even have a price range on a lot of these. So there's like a you know, under 20K, 20 to 200. So to your point, we could we may have enough information with some of these, but and there's also some project leads. Or that a lot of them have project leads on them. Is that enough information? This is a new, I think you're going to be the house expert, OES, on this kind of funding. We've never done it before.
Yeah, I mean, those one-liners are not enough for the field that we have to fill in for like what the project is. It's not like really a narrative, but the narratives aren't novels either. They're literally character limit. They're more like paragraphs, less of sentences. So if you guys are saying everything, even the non-highlighted stuff, are still valid projects, we just don't have everything for them yet, then my project lead column is what I'm definitely going to need, because we're going to have to go back to all these people and try to tease out of them what that one sentence is saying. Because like education, home hardening, education webinars. Is there a number of webinars? You know, is there printed materials? We have to kind of include that in the narrative if I'm just going to pick one right off the screen there. So that's kind of the guidance I'm looking for from you guys is, are we doing all of them? Are we only doing some of them? Who wants to work with us on trying to figure out who the submission entity is and what the full narrative is?
I know Chief Ramirez has her hand up. She might have a suggestion here. Chief?
Yeah, I apologize for jumping on late. I had some conflicting meetings. So I probably missed a fair amount of the discussion, but I think I get the general flavor of it. And to Dana's point, I think, and also appreciating what you're saying, Heather, about being inclusive, there is a point though at which we must move ahead with the information that we have that's viable now, that gives us enough detail that Dana can move forward with these partner agencies to try and develop these and to a more robust application should a funding bucket become available. We just don't want to miss that. Because this is more of a rolling application and NOIs as a whole, I mean, the Fire Safe Council is going to continue for years. So it will always be accepting new projects. There's not a deadline by which, you know, we will no longer accept any new project requests or NOIs. We're always going to shop for homes for these things. But the list that we have now is got enough wide and varied projects that if Dana's willing to move ahead with it, I would suggest we move with NOIs on all of them that she thinks that are reasonable, and then we can shop for homes.
Okay, there's a couple other folks with hands raised. Let's see, I'm gonna stop sharing so I can see folks. I see Bill and then Ken.
Yeah, I was kind of along the same thought process as Chief Ramirez, although to the point of Dana asking for more detailed abstracts, the ones that have submitted an abstract have done so over a long time ago, and the ones that haven't have had months to put this information in, and now we're talking about 2.5, 3 weeks to do this. So for my one opinion or vote would be, those that have turned in an abstract, move forward with the NOI, and the rest of them, we'll catch you next time. Unless you can do it in the next 2.5 weeks, but to go around and try and coax this out of them, I think is just a waste of time and energy. They've had months to do this, whoever is sponsoring these projects.
Ben?
Yeah, just a quick question for Dana. Can you handle the 17 that are highlighted in yellow there? Is that going to be doable for you guys in the span of time you have?
I will have to open that on a different screen, but I believe so, because we already have full narratives and everything. So it's just like plug and chug basically, and just figuring out
Kurt
who's the
nodding.
applicant.
I see Kurt nodding his head. That's a happy sign to my eyes too.
Yeah, me too. That means he just volunteered to do it. Look at that.
Thank you, Kurt. All right, thank you. So then I'll follow up and support the winds I'm hearing blowing in this group, that we have a bunch that are ready to go, and that if we have to formally in this group approve that list, I would like to make sure that that gets done tonight. So because if we wait a month, it won't be done. So we have to go. And so let's not make the perfect be the enemy of the good. Let's get 17 going.
If I may understand.
Ken, are you moving that those 17 go forward with the NOI? Is that what is that your motion?
Correct. And if we would like it as a formal motion, I would like to do that then. At this point, if there's no further discussion, I move that we approve the 17 that have abstracts so they can go forward to the county so that NOIs can be prepared.
And I would second that. I think that's the way to get things moving.
Okay, we have a first and a second.
I just have one question. This is not a motion to move forward as, because we're still back on the ranking thing. We haven't finished that work. So if we're just moving forward with the NOI, I totally support that. I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, that's a good question, Bill. I think that's what I understand and what Ken has presented for that. I don't think that would lock down the ranking sheet criteria that may still need to be looked at.
Yeah. Heather was nodding in the affirmative. I just want to get a thumbs up from Ken, who made the motion.
Yes, that was what I intended. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So first from Ken on moving those projects to an NOI. And a second from Don Palm. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any abstained? All right, motion carries. All right, so that completes us. Dana, was that all that you had in presenting that to us tonight?
What, you think you need more from me today? Yes, that's all I had formally, and just here to answer any questions. I know it's confusing, so.
No, I appreciate your clear and oversight on that. Very helpful, I think, for everybody. So great working through that. Heather, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, I think we achieved the goal of not missing this opportunity for Yolo and continuing a process that we can all eventually agree toward, work on, that we can agree on in the future. So I'm going to kick it over to Tanya to get us through the rest of our agenda, because we're already past almost 15 minutes past where we'd like to be.
All right, well, I can whip through this. So the next item on our agenda is our very short website development committee update. So Joaquin and I and Kurt, no, Kurt missed that one. Anyway, we have, Kurt, are you interrupting me?
That I want to share with you guys. It might relieve some stresses. because it might free up some of the funding that we all keep calling the Dodd funding. I just got an email from CAL FIRE that we were awarded the $617,986 for the PBA. So, so to give everybody a little bit of like stress relief, if you will, that would present a scenario where potentially, and this obviously it goes to the committee to push further and up to the Board of Supervisors for final decision making. But it would obviously allow for some of the money that was maybe previously identified as Dodd money to be utilized in other areas.
Well, that's exciting. That's a hard act.
How much was that again, Kurt?
617,986. 617,986. I got some hoops I got to jump through with CAL FIRE in order to make that happen. It sounds like I was talking with Tom Connect and Joy over at CAL FIRE, but it looks like it went to OES through, or we were the pass through to get to RCD, and they're going to be the ones to carry that out.
Thank you for the clarification.
Like drinking from a fire hose over here. Okay, so it's 5:15, so I just want to wrap this up unless anyone has any other comments or exciting news. That's a hard
Tanya,
one.
do we need to make an official motion to continue the project ranking sheet criteria, or is that?
I think we decided to table that. We can look at it at our next meeting. I mean, I just want to clarify that the steering committee has looked at all those projects and deemed them worthy. So kicking them over to the NOI process is, there's no red flags in any of those. They're all good projects. So to wrap up our agenda, so we did have a website development committee meeting. Joaquin had laid out a template for our website. As Heather mentioned earlier, the RCD will be hiring an outreach coordinator. So that person will be able to move along with a Fire Safe Council website separate from the RCD website and better than a Facebook page. So that is moving. And then the Wildfire Protection Plan, which is separate from the Fire Safe Council, but the Fire Safe Council obviously has input to that. We haven't actually started any CWPP typing up on any document yet, but we have a really great template. So that process will be starting soon as well. And then the other item is our next meeting, which would be the fourth Wednesday, would be February 23rd. And hopefully everybody agrees to that. I apologize for setting this meeting only for an hour. That was one of those Zoom things. But are we comfortable meeting for an hour and a half from 4 to 5:30 next month? Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good. I think that'll allow for some more time.
Yeah, not quite so rushed, but I really want to thank Dana for coming in with a lot of clarification. So I have nothing else.
Tanya, do we need to reconvene earlier to submit the ranking to Dana on some time? Is there a timeline, a deadline for that?
I believe Dana has out the information that she needs from our project forms.
For the NOI stuff, yeah, I'll just go off of the 15 ones that are highlighted and stuff.
And then Dana, you can always ask us for more details on stuff.
Yeah, Tanya, I'll reach out to you if as I start to populate them.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, and I'd like to just thank you, everybody. I know this meeting went kind of long and there's a lot of details with things, but really appreciate everybody's collaboration and cooperation and input. It really takes all of us coming together to make these projects work and find the funding sources. So just appreciate everybody's time today.
Thank you, Chief Lopez, for taking the reins.
Thanks everyone for the discussion.
With that, meeting adjourned.
All right, thank you.
Good night.